the globe. As you know, we are a global organization. I head up the Asia Pacific region, and we have our office in Singapore. We also are active in all major regions of the world. Our head office, of course, as you may be aware, is in Washington, D.C., and we have an office in Geneva in Switzerland as well. Where we are structured, we have chapters, so like the ASO Kolkata chapter here. We have organizational members, we have individual members, but most importantly of all, we have what we call our wider stakeholders. So they are our members, but at the same time, they're stakeholders in the whole internet ecosystem. And that can be anyone and everyone. It's not just the technical community, it's not just IT professionals, you know, it's government, it's private sector, it's industry, it's the retail sector, the manufacturing sector, because simply put, the internet itself has had a profound impact on the world at large. I mean, if you look at how the internet has evolved and what it has become today, the gentleman in the beginning, as he was introducing today's symposium, mentioned that imagining life without the internet is getting quite difficult now. So I would also put it to you that, particularly if we look at our younger generation, I don't think they know of a world without the internet. You know, it's not just that we're dependent on it, but it's part and parcel of who we are today. And I think as the next generations and the generations after that come out, you know, I am not a digital native as such. I am a digital migrant. But what we have now are digital natives, kids who have grown up with the internet, and they will then, you know, when they have their next generation come about, they will be completely integrated in what the internet is. And of course, what the internet of the future is, we don't really know. If you looked at it 10 years ago, it was very different. You know, voice over IP was an emerging area. Skype had just rolled out. But today, Skype, by volume, is the world's largest telecommunications company, simply because by the number of minutes they serve, and it's all running on internet protocol-related technology. So, you know, what the future landscape is, I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure that we'll all help build that future together. Turning to India itself, we have 4 chapters in India. So there's ASO Kolkata, of course. We have a chapter in Bangalore, one in Chennai, and one in Delhi. All 4 of them are active in their own way. Kolkata, by far, is the largest out of the 4. I think the latest numbers are they have over 1,600 members. So I'd just like to take time to thank Anupam and his team, who've contributed a lot to what the Internet Society is doing in Bengal and the Kolkata region, because I think it's well done. It is the largest chapter we have in the Asia Pacific region, and also the fastest growing. So just a round of applause to the Kolkata chapter, please. Thank you. If we look at the internet itself, and I mentioned that it's had a profound impact on us all. So let me ask you a question. Maybe it's a silly question. Is there anyone here who doesn't use the internet? So everyone does use the internet, okay. So we are at the right place. I saw there were a few other functions happening next door. I thought, just in case someone's wandered into our event, just to make sure. What also is happening is, you know, the whole environment around the internet is changing. It's evolving. What is true today may not be true 6 months later. And of course, part and parcel of that are issues around security and privacy. And of course, this whole session today is all about security and privacy and the twin challenges. Now, we can go out and build the most secure system in the world, right? And it'll be built like a tank. But as you all know, if you try and drive a tank, or if you've seen one driving a tank is a very uncomfortable vehicle. Okay, it's noisy, it shakes, it shudders. So yes, it's got armor plating, you know, bullets will bounce off, but the fact is, it's not very easy to drive. So very similarly, if we go out and build the strongest, most reliable IT systems, all that is fine. End of the day, it's the user who will use the system. So the question then is, do we build a super secure system which is so complicated that, and you know, take into account that the user is your simple average user. This room here is largely of IT professionals, so we know things. But if you speak to an average user, some of them even find it difficult to print a document. They find it difficult to connect to a wireless network, or join the wrong wireless network and say then nothing's working. So I think it's important to be very mindful that there is a balance between security and not having security. But at the same time, we should be very aware that our customers, people who we build the systems for, don't necessarily have the skill sets that we do. So therefore, it's very important to look into having a secure system, but at the same time being able to serve the user who is our customer, who is the people or persons who we're building the systems for. Now, as we move on into the internet space, so security, of course, is a big field. There are also, in some ways, it's also somewhat contentious as to what exactly is security. When we talk about security, what are we talking about? Are we talking about physical equipment security? Are we talking about user identification? Are we talking about privacy? Are we talking about someone hacking into our systems? So it's got many facets. And I would also suggest that each of those facets has subject matter experts, and I think we'll hear from a lot of them today. So I'm not going to get into a discussion with you now about what security is and what it's not. I think our range of panelists that we have, very high-profile panelists, I think they'll be able to share their experience and their perspectives. But what I just wanted to say is that there is a need for a balance. And as we embrace the internet more and more, there will be challenges. But at the same time, there will also be opportunities. So the question is, we as IT professionals or the technical community, do we look at it as a challenge or as an opportunity? I would put it to you that perhaps we need to look at it as an opportunity rather than a challenge. Challenges can be met. Opportunities need to be exploited. So that's the way I would look at it. One of the things that we at the Internet Society have been involved in and doing a bit of work on is around identity. Now, if we start looking at security in the IT space or the internet space, ultimately it actually comes down to who the user is. Am I who I claim to be? Are you who you claim to be? I am based in Singapore, so recently we had a series of incidents with the banking sector where people were trying to hack into accounts, phishing user IDs, and so on. But they were also mimicking ATM cards, so that installed little devices on ATM machines where a person would go and swipe the card, although the transaction would go through or it would bounce, but the card details, including the PIN number, was being stored by these devices. Then the person would come, take out the device, mimic that onto another card, and start withdrawing money from other parts of Asia, in Malaysia in particular. So there was a huge reaction by the community, by the users, the simple average users, that money is being stolen out of our accounts. What's the banking industry doing about it? And so Singapore being Singapore, the regulatory arm stepped in. Okay, banks, you now need to set up specific security guidelines. One of them was that every ATM card issued in Singapore by default cannot be used outside of Singapore. Okay. So if you want to use your ATM card or your credit card for that matter to withdraw cash from an ATM machine, you need to specifically sign up for that service. So it's not you are opted in by default and you opt out if you don't want it, but you are subscribing to, please opt me into that service so I can use my card outside. So we can actually relate that to the internet space itself. I mean, we see various controversies now and then floating up about social network sites and so on, without naming names, that there are privacy issues, there are security issues. Most of them give you default access to everything. It's upon you to go and decide what I should turn off and what I should turn on. So the question I put to you is that the right way to do it? Do we secure it by default and then unsecure bits we don't want the protection on? Or do we open everything up and then decide what we want to close down? Now, I don't have a specific answer to that. I think it depends on the perspective, on the user itself, and what they're doing. But I'm hoping, these are the sort of discussions we also have during the course of this day on how that can be addressed. Earlier today, one of the journalists at the event asked me about hacking, in particular how the younger generation have this infatuation, it would appear, with hacking into systems. Yes, it's a growing problem. Now, how do you fix it? The question he asked me was, what do you think the punishment should be? So, for a criminal act, the obvious punishment is you go to jail. But if it's a student, and I would suggest that perhaps he's a smart student, he or she is doing well at school, they have the skill sets to go and break into a system, is going to jail where they should be spending a part of their lives. What happens when they come out of jail? So instead of throwing them into jail on day one, maybe we need to set up an awareness program through our colleges, through our universities, through our educational institutions, that what are the issues in and around hacking. Now, there is also such a thing called ethical hacking, right? But I think what we're more concerned about is the not so ethical hacking, the black hat part of things, right? So I think there is a need to create more awareness. Now, and one of the things I think we, as the technical community, are failing in, amongst ourselves, we talk very well. Look at this room. We hear, I was just overhearing conversations in and around me over the last hour or so. People knew what they were talking about, and they were talking about issues. But are we also sending that same message out to the people who actually really need it? Are we going out to schools and colleges and doing the same thing? And if we are doing it, are we doing it holistically? So I think this awareness program, education program is very, very important. And again, I've heard from the ASO Kolkata chapter that they're actually taking some steps with other partners, perhaps some of you in the audience today, to see how can they address that at the college and university level, because that's where the need is. The other thing that the Internet Society really focuses on is being able to create and facilitate a multi-stakeholder dialogue process. And I think that's what we're doing here. Anupa mentioned, we have a multi-stakeholder range of speakers, as well as the audience. Across the world, whenever we do events, whenever we get involved with initiatives, we try and ensure that there's a balanced stakeholder model. And the reason is very simple. No one stakeholder group, no one constituency, no one community on its own can decide and deliberate what needs to be done. Because each stakeholder group has their own perspective. Government will have their own perspective, academics will have their own perspective, the technical community will have their own perspective, and your simple, humble user will have their own perspective. Being able to bring all those voices together in a forum for debate, dialogue, is the only way we can actually address some of these issues. So there is no magic solution to security. That is my closing comment. The only solution really is to work together, identify the issues, and then try and address them. And that can only be done in a multi-stakeholder forum. So I thank you for attending this session today, and I look forward to some great discussions ahead. Thank you very much.